All right, we should be live. So, welcome everyone to the Mega Alumni Podcast. This is our third episode, I believe. And today I have another fellow Mega member also joining me and one guest from her lab. Before we begin, let me just quickly introduce myself. My name is Nehal. I am doing my PhD at the Ohio State University. And as a grad student, I'm a part of our graduate student body, which is Mega, and we are doing this podcast just to help engage our grad students with our alumni, hopefully even other undergrad students and other alumni as we keep going along. Quickly shifting focus from myself, Katie Blessinger, do you want to also introduce yourself quickly as a fellow Mega member?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Katie. I'm also a PhD student in mechanical engineering and also involved with Mega. But I'm joining today because our guest is an alumni from the lab that I'm in. So we'll be talking about getting jobs in the medical device industry or related to biomechanics stuff. Um, and so our guest for today is also named Katie. Um, but her last name is Katie Geers. And she did both her undergrad and grad degrees at OSU. So she did an honors thesis with our lab where she looked at 3D printing patient-specific cutting guides for an orthopedic surgery. And she expanded on that in her master's, where she looked at varying different things that they vary in the surgery, and looking at the effect of those on knee biomechanics. That's very vague, so feel free to add to that, Katie. But now she's a design engineer at Stryker and has been there for the last year and a half or so. So I'll let her add to that because I know that was a really general introduction to herself.
Yeah, no, thanks, Katie. That was pretty good. Not confusing at all that we're both named Katie either, but yeah, thanks for having me. Like Katie said, I graduated in 2021 with my bachelor's in mechanical engineering at Ohio State. And then I went on to get my master's as well, and I graduated in August of 2022. So I did the combined degree program, so it was a little bit faster, which was nice. And like Katie said, I did an undergraduate honors thesis in Dr. Siston's lab, where I worked with an orthopedic surgeon to design a 3D printed patient-specific cutting guide for a type of orthopedic surgery. So that was super cool. Got to work with a lot of people over at the medical center, orthopedic surgeons, medical students, a lot of interesting design work. And then for my graduate thesis, I kind of expanded on that and did more of a simulation-based project where I looked at varying different ligament stiffnesses and the tibial slope and doing some data analysis to see how that affects different biomechanical parameters. But yeah, and like Katie said, I work at Stryker Medical now as a design engineer in new product development. So I've been there since June of 2022. So there's a little bit of overlap between finishing grad school and working there. So that was a little bit chaotic for 2 months, but it's been a good experience overall. Do you want me to go into a little bit more of the specifics of what I do in my job?
Yeah. So yeah, could you? So you mentioned that you're in as a design engineer, right? I'm guessing. So yeah, could you just give us maybe just the details that don't get you into trouble about what
Yeah.
exactly you're trying to design there?
Yeah, I guess it's a little difficult. So I'm in new product development, and I can't talk a whole lot about the specific project that I'm on, but I can tell you a little bit more about the products that my division that I work at is. So Stryker's pretty big company, a lot of different locations. So I work specifically at our Portage, Michigan location, and there we have two different divisions. So there's emergency care, which is the division that I work in, and then we also have acute care. So the acute care department kind of does products that are in the hospital. So that's hospital beds, other products like that. And in emergency care, we do specifically products that go on the back of an ambulance. So one of our most common products that I feel people see a lot, it shows up a lot on Netflix shows, which because I work there, I'll recognize it. I don't know if other people recognize it, but we have a powered ambulance cot and all of our products are bright yellow. So they're very recognizable. So I did get to do a little work on that, which was cool. And I'm allowed to talk about that since it's a product that's released on the market, but did a little bit of work on the production line for that and helping to improve the output rate and produce more of the cots faster, basically. So that was a cool experience. And then I work in new product development So that project, work with like a lot of different cross-functional team members, which is cool. So like we do a lot of testing. We have test engineers and a really big test lab, which is super cool. And then we do work with like sourcing engineers. Trying to think what else. Test sourcing. We have a lot of industrial designers at Stryker. We're very heavy on the industrial design side. So super cool.
Yeah, seems like a
Yeah.
very multidisciplinary kind of thing in terms of like the entire supply chain, right? So from the product inception all the way to like manufacturing it and then scaling it, I'm guessing all of that.
Yeah. So we have at the location that I work, we actually have like a giant manufacturing facility. So we do a lot of manufacturing there, and we have a heavy focus on designing products to be manufacturable. So a lot of good applications for manufacturing classes that I took.
Interesting. Yeah, just for our viewers, where are you situated? So where is this?
Yeah, it's in Portage, Michigan, which is like a town outside of Kalamazoo, Michigan. So it's southwest.
Gotcha.
I guess people here talk with their hand, but I'm not very good at it. But it's like here, maybe, if I'm doing that right. I don't know. I'm from Columbus, so moving to Michigan has been interesting, but
Right, right.
So I know you talked about the manufacturing classes, but were there other like technical skills or soft skills that you found that you learned while you were at Ohio State that have really helped you be successful in your job?
Yeah, so I would say like definitely the CAD work that I did has been really useful. Like I do a lot of CAD work. We learned SolidWorks at Ohio State, and at Stryker we use Creo. So it's been like a little bit of a learning curve adapting my SolidWorks skills to Creo just because like the user interfaces are a little bit different. But I took like in grad school the advanced CAD course that I think Dr. Metzler teaches. I don't know if she still teaches it, but that was super cool because we learned a lot of GD&T in that course, and I use a lot of that. Like right now, we're actually doing a lot of stuff with like engineering drawings, and I'm applying a lot of what I learned in that. So it's definitely good that I was able to get those like foundations in that course, and now I get to apply it in my job. And you said like a lot of manufacturing, apply that a lot, and like it was good that I took that course and learned a lot about like the different manufacturing processes. And I was surprised. I took the injury biomechanics course that Dr. Bolte taught, and I didn't expect to really use that a whole lot, but Stryker does a lot of crash testing, so I've actually gotten to apply a lot of that, which was kind of surprising to me because I never would have expected that, but it's definitely glad that I took that course and get to apply that. As far as soft skills, communication is just really big. Like I said, I work with a lot of like different cross-functional team members. So being able to communicate like stuff about our design and like what we're doing to those different team members is like really important, and making sure you're asking the right people the right questions and making sure everyone's aware of kind of the work you're doing has been super big.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to that, so I'm guessing since you were in that combined degree program, I'm guessing did you have some sort of an extended capstone? And do you feel like the capstone experience also really enhances that team building and, collaboration kind of thing, which I guess would be very important for the role that you're kind of doing at Stryker?
Yeah, so I didn't do the extended capstone, but I did the medical devices capstone that was combined with like mechanical engineers and biomedical engineers. So you do kind of get that like interdisciplinary collaboration, like working with different groups of people, which is definitely helpful.
Interesting. Interesting. And I think another thing that Katie has here, which again, I don't know, but yeah, mentioned that you were also a TA for a while.
Yeah. So I TA'd in grad school for the mechanical engineering general capstone course. So that was cool. I'm very passionate about design, so I was glad that I got to TA for a design course, and it was super cool getting to help students with their projects, and then kind of seeing how a lot of that stuff like applies to the work that I do now. I mean, it's very similar, which is interesting.
Yeah, so that I guess another follow-up question was that uh, the experience as a TA, is that something that has helped you as well? And also being a TA, especially for a capstone project, you kind of go and keep guiding student teams one-on-one. And so that kind of, it gives you some sort of a mentorship experience. Do you feel like that's also come in handy? And do you have any sort of mentorship role at the company as well as new recruits keep getting hired?
Yeah, so Stryker has a pretty big intern program, so we get a lot of, like, I think this past summer, just at least in the engineering department, we had like at least 30 interns across emergency care and acute care. So I did get to do some mentoring with one of the interns. We didn't have an intern directly on my team this summer just because we didn't have a need for one. But like I said, I got to do some mentoring for one of the engineers, which was cool, and just meet with her a few times and talk to her a little bit about like her interests and see what she wanted to do. And then it was funny, last fall we did a senior capstone project. So I kind of got to be on the other side of things and be like the industry representative and talk to some students at NCSU, North Carolina State University, and work with them on a capstone project. So it was cool to kind of be on the other side of things and work from it from that point of view. But
Interesting.
Did you find it being a learning curve at all, learning about FDA stuff and regulatory affairs working in the medical device industry, coming from a mechanical engineering background?
yeah, so I did intern at a medical device company, so I had like a little bit of insight into that. But at Stryker, we have like a separate regulatory department, so it's kind of separate, but we do kind of overlap with them a fair amount. But usually we like, it's more about knowing who to talk to, I guess. If I have some question or I think, okay, this might kind of be a regulatory question, then I can go to our regulatory representative on our team and say, hey, like, wondering about this, like, can you point me in the right direction if you're not the right person to answer a question? So it's been very helpful. One of the reasons that coming out of college, I wanted to work at like a larger company, just because I know there's a lot of good resources, a lot of really smart people that I can kind of learn from. So I don't feel like I had to like know all of it myself, like kind of have people that I can talk to and they can help me out with it.
Okay. So sort of related to that, were there any other like technical skills that you sort of wish you had learned at Ohio State? I know you said the like specific brand of CAD software is different but were there any other like skills or coding languages or technical things that you wish you had learned at OSU that might be helpful for future students to learn before they start their careers?
Yeah, I do think in design, like something that would really help me is if I had taken like a supply chain course. And I know that's not something that like engineers typically do, but we do a lot of interacting with like suppliers. And I like don't have a lot of experience with that, like coming into working here. So that would definitely, I think, have helped me at least give me some more like background knowledge of like how that works. And like we talk a lot about like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, and like I just didn't really have that background. So I think that would have benefited me. Like I guess would that be like a class to be in the business school? I don't even really know, but I think
Yeah,
that would have definitely helped out.
So I'm taking the advanced FEM course this semester, and there is a classmate that I have who's, I think, majoring in industrial engineering. And I think
Okay.
they have an
Oh, that's a good
intersection
point.
of like a lot of these things. I'm guessing maybe they might have something in their curriculum that fits to supply chain. I'm guessing maybe the Fisher School also might have something, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not entirely sure. But yeah, that's pretty interesting, and I think that makes a lot of sense if you're leaning towards industry and you know that you're going to be a part of a big chain where you need to
Mm-hmm.
be talking to a lot of people and get to know how to get the things to make your thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
right. That that makes a lot of sense. And kind of following up a little bit on that is after graduating, and I know since it's just been 1.5 year since you graduated, have you been able to like clearly see some differences between academia and industry, like some of the approaches that are taking place, and also perhaps research and product development? Like you would have seen the capstone side of more academic focused project kind of a thing versus in the industry where you're now really focused on like, hey, we need to get this out to market. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say like I think one of the big differences is just like in school, I felt like a lot of the projects you do are like a little bit more shorter term. I guess like that's not necessarily a case in grad school when you're working on these like longer projects, but like the project that I'm on has been going on for like 4 or 5 years already, and it's gonna keep going for the next 2, 3 years. So it's a lot longer projects. I'd say like one of the other differences is just like the people that you work with. Like I said, you work with like a lot of people from different backgrounds, but also like a lot of people that might be a lot more experienced than like say I am coming right out of school. And I think that was something that like getting into Stryker at first was like a little bit difficult because I'm looking at these people and I'm like, wow, they're so smart. They have 10 plus more years of experience than I do. And like I guess it's kind of like imposter syndrome. I'm like, how can I ever like get to that point? And I was kind of like having to remind myself like, hey, they have 10 more years of experience than I do. Like, we'll get there. But I think that was a little difficult at first. And then I've kind of gotten to a point where like I get to learn from them. And I think that's super cool. But it's just like something that like is definitely a big difference in like school. Like you're working with a lot of people that are like around similar experience levels as you, like similar age. So it's another big difference. But
Yeah, kind of adding on to that a little bit, and you said that learning from the more experienced people on your team there, that's kind of very different than how we kind of learn things when we are doing a degree, right? Like it's very structured. You have a course, you have an instructor, uh, and then as you are doing more of the self-learning and guided learning from your peers, how is that kind of also affect just your work-life balance? Is it like understood that for new trainees, like you have some time allotted to like just learn things? Or are you like really expected to be ready to go when you get into the company?
yeah, I know they understand that it's going to take some time for you to come up to speed. So like I would say maybe the first like 3 months or so, even like there's so many trainings that you have to complete, and everyone kind of understands that you're just kind of getting up to speed on all the trainings, especially coming right out of school too. Like everyone's kind of helping you along the way, and you've got to get background on like not only just like getting up to speed on the generic like industry trainings, but also like understanding how specific company you're at works and like how the departments work and who to ask what questions to. But then also like getting the background on the specific product, like in new product development, and kind of understanding like the problems that that project has faced in the past and like how they've been solved, and kind of getting all of that context. That definitely takes a lot of time too. I'd say like took me about 6 months maybe to feel like I was really starting to make some progress and feeling kind of dangerous at the job, but everyone's super understanding and helpful, and like there's always people who are like super willing to answer any questions you would have, which is super helpful starting out.
Right, right. And yeah, just another quick follow-up on that. So since you're kind of also working in this intersection of, I guess, you're focused on the mechanical aspects, I'm guessing, but
Mhm.
since the field is still like this biomedical devices field, I'm guessing, area in general, do you also end up like do you end up learning a lot about things that you had no idea about in terms of like outside of mechanical, or did you have some experience with that because of the kind of work that you do in your lab, like you and Katie? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely feel like I've learned a lot outside of like mechanical engineering. So we do emergency care products, which are products that go on the back of an ambulance. So all of our customers are like paramedics, EMTs. So I've learned a lot about just like EMT, like different, like, I don't know what to call them, like ways to treat patients, because they
Mm.
kind of have to have that context for different products. So that's been super interesting. Like one thing they have everyone at Stryker do, like when they first start out in emergency care, is you get to do like an ambulance ride along. So like I got to go spend like an 8-hour shift with paramedics and literally sit in the back of an ambulance and like watch what they do. So like getting that background is definitely not something I would have expected with a mechanical engineering degree, but it's been super helpful. And like I said, a lot of stuff that I learned in biomechanics and like through my research has been helpful too. Like just having that like biological background to apply to mechanical engineering has definitely been helpful. But there's a lot of stuff that I learn every day that I definitely wouldn't have thought I would have learned with a mechanical engineering background.
Makes sense.
So this question is sort of related to that, but it's more about being a student in general. Is there anything that you miss about being a student at OSU, or is there anything that you're like happy to not have to deal with as working full time now?
Feel
Yeah.
free to say that you don't like being in Michigan.
I get so I have people give me such a hard time. at work because everyone that I work with is either like a U of M grad or like U of M fan or Michigan State fan. So anytime I wear my Ohio State into work, I get like people give me such a hard time. It's funny. So it'll be interesting coming up on the game around Thanksgiving to see what everyone has to say. But yeah, I would say like things I don't miss, definitely like late nights having to be up trying to finish a project or like finish a homework assignment or whatever. Definitely don't miss that. But I do miss like just being close to like a lot of my friends and like living on campus, and like Ohio State's campus is just really pretty. So like I miss just being able to like go out, walk in between classes and just like enjoy campus. I miss having football tickets too. That's definitely was a fun thing that you don't really get once you graduate school. So miss that. But I do miss like Scott Lab. Honestly, I hate to say it, but just like being around people who all have like a common goal, I guess, of like getting their degree. I guess it's like that at work too, where like everyone's kind of working toward a project, but like in college everyone's kind of at like the same point in their lives, like all working for like a specific degree.
All right. So kind of moving on from student life, let's get into the let's get into a little bit of the process of how you got into your current role. Yeah, could you give some idea like what the path is like for a kind of a job that you're doing right now? What would the application process look like?
Yeah, so I was like very specific about what I wanted to do coming out of school. Like I knew I wanted to work in design, I wanted to work at a medical device company, I wanted to work at a big company. So with being that specific, I kind of had to just like I had a good idea of a lot of different medical device companies that I would be interested in. So a lot of what I did was just going onto their websites, probably like trying to think when I started to look for jobs. Like I almost want to say I graduated in August of 2022, and so I started looking like January of that year and just looking at the companies that I was interested in, checking their websites regularly to see if there was any jobs that like I might be qualified for. And that's because I was so specific, but like LinkedIn is super helpful as well, like looking at LinkedIn for different jobs. I think I use Handshake a fair amount too, and like Leverage, like ECS a lot. So that was super helpful. I did find like I never felt like OSU career fairs had a ton of medical device companies. Like there was always like maybe a few, but like I feel like there was a lot more like automotive companies typically, or like companies in other fields. So for me, it was definitely just like knowing which companies I would be interested in and then going to their websites and checking their job postings and applying online.
Did you have so since your lab kind of does biomechanics related research, so were you like also aware of some of these companies as to, so you said like you were very sure as to what industry you wanted to go in, right? So did you have an idea of exactly which companies you would want to apply to as well? Or is that something that you had to like find out?
Um, that's a good question. Some like a fair amount of them I just kind of knew from over the years, like being in different courses and hearing them mentioned, or just like seeing stuff on LinkedIn. But I don't know, like Katie, like, did you feel like I feel like we didn't really do a whole lot with like industry. There were a few people who had projects where they worked with like industry sponsors, but felt like when I was in the lab, we didn't do a ton.
Yeah, I feel like I might be wrong, but generally, like in our field, I feel like we just kind of know like the companies that we're interested in just from like, I don't know, like other people who interned at that company, and you're like, oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So you just kind of learn it from other people. We're not really like
Yeah.
taught it formally.
Yeah. And I guess like being familiar with like medical products definitely helps because then you can look at like, well, I've seen these products around and they've got this company's name on them. So maybe I should check that company out. But
Yeah, and I know Katie, you had a lot of more specific questions that I know you can ask. So please go ahead.
Sure. So, a question that I know this podcast is mostly for grad students, but a question I get a lot from undergrads is, like, is a master's degree recommended for pursuing a job in the medical device industry? I know it can be like kind of competitive because it's really interesting for a lot of students to want to work in. So what are your thoughts on, like, is a grad degree like required or like highly recommended versus just applying like straight out of undergrad?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wouldn't say it was required necessarily, but like one of my reasons for pursuing a grad degree was just that I wanted to kind of take more courses that were more specialized towards like the medical device industry. And I feel like mechanical engineering undergrad at Ohio State is like very specific. And I know you get towards like the end, you get to take your technical electives, but I do feel like it's not super tailored to medical device. And with a graduate degree, I felt like I had the opportunity to take more courses that had more of like a biological focus or like a medical device focus. So like I took a like biomaterials course out of like the Department of BME, which I might not have done. I don't think I had time for it in my undergrad. Where I took like that injury biomechanics course that I was talking about. And I feel like the graduate degree, like you get a chance to kind of take more specialized courses for what you're interested in, and that was super helpful. But I wouldn't say it was like necessary. I just feel like if you're a mechanical engineer and you want to go into the medical device industry, it helps to kind of have some type of experience, whether it be from like an internship or like that was kind of how I got into research, is I wanted to kind of get more experience with medical devices or biomechanics, like just something in that field. And so I think just having that experience definitely makes you more competitive, like more of a competitive applicant for applying to those jobs. And it gives you like more to talk about in interviews as well. Like I think I talked a lot about my research in my all the interviews that I did. So it's always good that you have that background to speak to.
Yeah, and
Cool.
I guess just a quick follow-up to that. So since you've been there for a while and you said that you're looking at some of the newer trainees, interns coming in as well, just a question on like, so are you seeing like some undergrads who are maybe like just doing biomechanical focused projects also being able to make it here without like the more graduate research focused background? Are they still able to like keep up in that environment that you're kind of working in?
Yeah, I would say we get a lot of interns that are like typically between like sophomore junior year, so a little bit younger. And they tend to come back year after year. So starting out, like I would say they might not have as much experience and they kind of learn over time, like over the 3-month program. So I mean, I guess an internship is always another good way to get experience as
Right.
well. And if you would want to go into the medical device industry, I would say another thing, I forgot to mention this, but I did the like medical devices capstone, and that's like another good way if you don't have a chance to do an internship to kind of get that specialized experience in undergrad.
So when you were in the process of interviewing with companies, did you find them to ask like a combination of both technical and soft skill type questions? Because I guess usually like when you talk to computer science people or software people, they're like, I did whiteboard coding for my interview. What types of like technical questions do they tend to ask for medical device interview?
Yeah, so I actually honestly didn't interview with a ton of places before I got the job at Stryker. And their interview process wasn't super, they didn't have like a formal technical interview, but there was, I think, 4 rounds of different interviews that I had to go through. And one of them I think is interesting that they do like a personality test interview where you're not even speaking to a Stryker employee, you're actually talking to like an external company, and they rapid fire like 70 different questions at you in an hour to kind of like, it's basically like a personality test, and they want your first answer right off the bat. So that was kind of interesting compared to like a typical technical interview that I would have, but it was more so just like talking about my like technical experience and like specific projects that I worked on. Like they were more application focused, like what projects have you worked on, like how have you applied your coursework to those and that sort of thing. I didn't have the traditional like here's a free body diagram, solve this or that sort of thing. But yeah, I have heard that in like coding interviews, they have to do like coding on the fly, which for me without a coding background, that sounds really scary. But yeah, it was more just like talking to the engineers that I would be working with and just like showing that I have experience and like am qualified for the different like descriptions of the job.
Yeah, that psych test is pretty interesting. Yeah, I did not know they did that. uh, and kind of,
Yeah, it is interesting.
do you have any idea as to like if that is somewhat relevant or specific for your role, or is that just like a company policy thing?
It's like a Stryker wide thing. They try to hire like very type A people. So that's kind of why they do that. But yeah, it was definitely interesting because I did not expect that either.
Yeah, yeah. And kind of following up on the point that you made earlier of like internships being important, right? Of to get some experience in like if you're interested in a particular kind of industrial area. I know that Katie kind of put in a point here in our notes that you interned at Aviation Medical with their R&D team before. So yeah, I was wondering what if you could speak something about the experience you had there as an intern.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I feel like I didn't give a lot of good background to that. So I interned at Aviation Medical. It's a medical device startup company based out of Columbus. So I was there from I think January of 2020 to August 2020. So through the pandemic, which was definitely an interesting experience. But they are working on a neuromodulation device to help treat overactive bladder syndrome. I think they recently got FDA 510(k) approval for it. Don't quote me on that, but I still follow them on LinkedIn, so I get to see what they're doing because I was there, like I said, the January through August 2020, and then I did come back in between my senior year at Ohio State and my first year of grad school. So that was super cool to work at a startup. Definitely a different experience from what I have at Stryker with it being such a large company, but it was a good internship experience and just kind of getting to see like at a small company like that how the different departments work together and getting a lot of good just like I don't know engineering internship experience there. Like they were such a small company that they took advantage of all the resources they had, so they kept really busy and I got to do a lot of different stuff like maybe that I wouldn't even do with an engineering role, but like some stuff that maybe like you would do if you were like more on the regulatory side of things or more on the quality side of things. I think that was one of the advantages of it being so small is I got like more firsthand experience in like those different roles. But comparing that to working at Stryker and with it being such a larger company, definitely quite different. Different but the same, I guess, in the way that they operate. But
Right. Uh, do you think so? Just kind of a follow up question. Do you think like looking back at your experience, the fact that it was a smaller company and you got to play around a little bit, do you think that really drove you or kind of materialized the fact that yeah, this is the industry I'm really interested in because you got to experience the work like I guess more hands-on in a more hands-on way compared to like if you would have, let's say, interned at Stryker at the initially.
yeah, I would say definitely. I mean, I definitely did get a lot of good hands-on work. I feel like Stryker's internships are kind of like that too, where you get a lot of good hands-on work, which is nice that they've developed their intern program to be at that level. But I do think if I had worked at like, I know there's a lot of companies that have internship programs that are very like more so educational and not so much so like focused on you having a project that you get to do and work on. And if I had worked on at a place there, maybe I wouldn't have been as inclined to continue in the medical device industry. But where I interned, I definitely got a lot of hands-on work and they treated me like a full-time engineer, which was super good and gave me a lot of good, like fulfilling work to do. It wasn't like I was given a stack of documents and they said, oh, go file these away. Like you see in like movies and stuff, like the intern work, but got to do like a lot of good fulfilling work and like even now see like the work that I did and how it applies to the product that they have released, which is super cool.
So one of the like wrap up questions that we usually ask, or not we, Nahal, we usually ask people, is if you have any advice for current grad students, in like 3 different experience levels. So like grad students who are just starting, grad students sort of in the middle of their program, and grad students who are like about to graduate and ready to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, feel free to
Okay.
add any advice that you have for like combined degree students as well, because I know we have a couple of grad students who are in that program. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess as far as the combined degree program goes, I feel like the one thing that I needed to hear was just like, you'll make it, it'll be fine. So definitely had a lot of moments where I was like, I should drop out. But just like definitely persevere through it. Sometimes it's a little rough, but it'll be worth it in the end when you get to the end. Um, for grad students just starting out, I feel like one thing there's someone told me to just like be like very clear with what your goals are and like what you hope to get out of a graduate degree, and like make sure that you're doing things that kind of align with those goals, and like try to be kind of like intentional with how you spend your time, and like take advantage of all the resources that OSU has. Like they've got a lot of good like clubs, courses, different labs, like that sort of thing, that like just try to take as much advantage of that as you can, like while you can. And definitely just try to like network with as many people as possible. I mean, you're in this like place where you're surrounded by a lot of people with like similar goals as you, and the professors are super helpful too. Like just try to network with as many people as you can and like develop lasting relationships, because you kind of never know when those might come in handy down the line. And students in the middle of their program, feel like just keep going. I don't know. Make sure you're taking time to like still take care of yourself and like set aside some time to like do things that you still enjoy, because I feel like grad school can definitely get tough, especially in the winter when it starts to get dark super early and you're super busy when it comes close to finals. So like make sure you're still taking time to do things that you enjoy that might not be school all the time. And the last one was for students at the end of the program. I feel like just take time to like appreciate all the work you've done. Like I feel like for me at the end of my program, everything was moving like so fast, because I was also like working full time. So I had that 2 month of overlap where I was working full time and doing all this new training. And then I was also trying to finish my thesis and my like presentation and do all of that. So I was working like around the clock pretty much. And like I don't feel like I really had the chance until like literally graduation day to sit back and say like, wow, I've done a lot of work, and like really appreciate the work that I've done. Also for students like getting close to graduating, definitely be prepared for like the free time that you're gonna have when it's over. Like I think that was something that was kind of scary, is like you go through this period of time, maybe like 6+ years where you're super busy all the time, and then you graduate and you're like, oh my gosh, like what am I gonna do with my free time now? And I think that's kind of scary at first, but definitely something that like I've come to appreciate now, being out for like a year and a half.
Well, thank you. Those were all really good pieces of advice, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, since kind of Katie mentioned this is near our like wrap up. So just to ask like a final question, I guess, is you mentioned like, a couple like having all this free time once you're done with your degree. I was wondering if you had any other leisurely activities that you feel that you got into now once you graduated, any hobbies or things like that, and then just things that you feel that maybe I could have done this while I was a grad student as well, and or there were things that you did in your grad life that you look back on and say that, yeah, that really helped me out with
Yeah,
the stress and like life.
yeah. I feel like something that helped me a lot in grad school was just like exercising, like running, or like the RPAC. Like I would go there a fair amount, and like that's another thing for people in grad school, is appreciate the RPAC, because that's a really nice gym. And other gyms aren't always that nice. But I mean, for me, exercising was always like a good way to kind of relieve stress. But like one thing I don't feel like I got to do a lot in school was like just read books. Like that was something that I did a lot when I was younger, but then I got into college, and like if you're reading books, you're reading textbooks, or you're reading research papers or whatever, you're not really just like reading for fun. So that's something that like now that I've got more free time, I do that. I feel like I have a lot of like grandma hobbies, honestly, like
That's fine.
reading, like doing puzzles. But it's been nice to get to do that and have the time to do that. Like the one thing about like working is you've got like a very strict schedule during the day, like 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. or 5 p.m. kind of at work the whole day, and that's what I do it in my time too. You don't get the same like flexibility that you get in school, where like maybe say you have a break between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. and you can do whatever during that time. But it's nice that you have like your weekends are always free and you don't really have to be spending time on the weekend doing things. And then you've also got like your evenings that are free. So like one thing I started recently was I signed up for like a pottery class. So that was super cool and like a fun way to spend time now that I have time to spend, I guess. But
Yeah, those all sound like really fun activities. Cool.
yeah, it's definitely a good contrast to like engineering work during the day and then getting to do something like more creative, like artistic, and it's definitely a nice way to spend the evening.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess just the final follow-up question. Do you feel like this is something that I don't know how much, I guess as PhD students, like you end up staying in this academic kind of routine for such a long time. But I always wonder that once you get the free time and you start doing these other things a little bit, do you think that really helps refresh your mind when you go to work the next day, right? Especially when you're doing something like design and there is like a
Mhm.
creative aspect to it. I always wonder if just having those breaks and doing something else like really helps you reset your thought process or your like creativity, I guess.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Like I do feel like there's a lot of overlap between like art and like design. And like it is interesting how like a lot of like I'll do this sometimes, or like my coworkers will do this sometimes. Like you'll see things out and about that you can bring into work and say, like, hey, I saw this yesterday and I think it really might help us solve this problem. Or like, I don't know, like it's just the way that you see things not in an engineering context and how that might apply to an engineering context is super interesting. And even like we'll do like benchmarking activities sometimes where we'll just like go to different stores that might not be directly related to the project we're working on, but just kind of see like if that will give us inspiration for like what we're doing. So definitely is like a good way to look at things and kind of take yourself out of that engineering mindset, but like bring what you see in the world around you into that.
Absolutely. Makes sense. Well, thank you, Katie, both Katie's Blessinger and Katie Gears for joining us for this episode. So before I just wrap up, I just want to quickly plug in a couple of the mega resources. So all for all the viewers, you should have our website, our Instagram, our LinkedIn page in the description. We also have a LinkedIn alumni page. So if you're an alumni from our department, any degree level, please feel free to join us there. We post a lot of updates over there. And Katie, do you want to share your link? Are you fine sharing your LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, I can share it. I'll send it to you after this. And like if
Sounds good.
anyone has any additional questions or just wants to know more about like medical device industry or design or anything, like feel free to shoot me a message.
Sounds good. So yeah, I'll put in Katie's LinkedIn profile in the description as well. And I don't think you mentioned that your company isn't likely hiring anyone at lower positions, but managerial kind of roles openings are still there,
Yeah, I believe we have
right?
some manager openings right now, but like I said, Stryker is a big company, so I'm sure one of our divisions is hiring. If anyone
Right.
is interested, just definitely go on the website and check it out.
Sounds good. And if by chance we have some alumni watching who has experience, maybe you want to look at those managerial roles as well. Uh, all right. Well, I guess that's all we have for this episode. I'll go ahead and stop the recording now.